Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer of Spiked. A very good evening, sir. How are you?
Hi, Jeremy. How you doing?
I'm good. I didn't mean to spend most of the show talking about Sara Sharif, but I was rather galvanised, well, I say galvanised, the wrong word, by the ex-head of social services in Wiltshire, who said this is because of government cuts and, you know, a lack of training. You shouldn't really be horrible to these people who didn't go round despite being warned for 2.5 years. Is it me, Brendan? Have I missed the point here, or do you feel the same? Because this is abhorrent to me, and I believe, sorry, these people have blood on their hands.
It's horrendous. And, you know, this murder is down to Sara Sharif's father and her stepmother, but it shames the whole country because this girl essentially died in public. She died in the public view. People heard her screaming. Social workers knew that she was being beaten and tortured. They went around, they looked into it. They didn't take sufficient action. School teachers knew that something was up. Lots of people knew that something was dreadfully wrong here and not insufficient action was taken. So this is on the father who behaved in such a barbaric way to his own daughter, but it's on us as a country as well. And we really have got to get our house in order, especially in relation to social workers who seem to be failing children too often these days.
Completely agree. And, of course, I get it's difficult, but to me it's about common sense. And then, of course, the rather unedifying news that this piece of, I don't even know the right way to describe, exploited EU rules to stay in the UK by employing a human rights lawyer, who we all paid for, the tax person, to go through the sham marriage to a Polish girl to stay here. Again, another example of how we seemingly will look after somebody who was a serial abuser of vulnerable women, and yet we don't care about a 10-year-old. How does that happen in my mind? I don't understand it. I genuinely don't.
Yeah, you know, the fact that he was able to exploit the EU's Freedom of Movement Directive should really raise questions about directives like that. You know, he was essentially aided and abetted by various wings of the state, including the European Union, the superstate, which has this directive which says that if someone from outside of Europe marries someone who's an EU citizen, then they can essentially live in anywhere in the EU that they want to. So there was very little that we could do to remove him from the UK because he married a Polish person. Therefore, he was allowed to stay because we were in the EU. Every rule seemed to benefit him rather than Sara. Everything seemed to be, geared towards him getting a bit of an easy time and being able to build the life that he wanted rather than to the safety of that girl. And I think that's a time when society really needs to have a serious reckoning with itself.
Very personal, this next question. Don't have to answer it. Where are you on the death penalty for low lives like that?
I'm against the death penalty, but cases like this really test my opposition. They really do, because I don't see why we should have to pay to keep this man alive. But, you know, I'm opposed to the death penalty on principle. I'm not comfortable with a state having power over life and death. And in fact,
well, they are now because of assisted dying.
Well, there you go. So I'm worried about assisted dying for that very reason. But I often also think it's a greater punishment to make these people rot in a cell for the rest of their lives rather than giving them the easy way out. So I'm very keen on the severest punishment we can inflict on these people. And for now, I think that is making sure they never see sunlight again.
Couldn't disagree with you in any way. Now, I'm slightly conflicted on the next story, and I've been looking forward to your response to this all day. Angela Rayner, who looked about... she looked like a fish out of water on Sunday on Sky News with Sir Trevor. She was unable to talk about Syria. She didn't even know where Syria was. She's only getting on about prisons, and it was all a bit too much. But new prisons will be forced through the planning process, our Ange has announced today, under powers that will allow the objections of local towns and villages to be overruled. Under laws introduced to tackle the prison overcrowding crisis that we've got, the Ministry of Justice will be able to bypass councils who usually make the decisions on planning applications. Now, I am not a fan of this Labour government in any which way. Certainly not of her. And many, in fact, all of them. On the week that Sadiq, what's he called? Sir Sadiq Khan's going to get a knighthood. I mean, the whole thing leaves me cold. However, we have spent years and years in this country, Brendan, having a debate about more houses and talking about NIMBYs and talking about overcrowded prisons. And surely, actually, through gritted teeth, she's right, isn't she? We need to build prisons. And if that upsets a few people and takes up a few fields, sorry, but we need them, don't we?
Yeah, it's one of those difficult subjects, isn't it? Because, you know, you can perfectly understand. There's probably no community in the whole country that actively wants a prison next door. You know, there's not the kind of thing you want to see being built up the road. So I can understand why people might feel uncomfortable with that kind of institution. It's an unpleasant but necessary institution. No one wants to live next door to one. But at the same time, you're right. We do obviously need more prison space. I don't think we can allow NIMBYs, which is a pejorative term, but often quite appropriate. I don't think we can allow them to stand in the way of that. I just hope that the government, well, there are two things. Firstly, the government shouldn't be banging up people who've committed minor crimes, such as writing things on Facebook or tweeting an off-colour joke or whatever else might have happened over the past
But maybe they
few
should be jailing paedophiles who get suspended sentences. There's nothing at all that makes any sense in that at all, is there? Ever?
Absolutely not. There is a real problem with two-tier justice. Our justice system is broken and our prison system is overcrowded, and all of these problems need fixing, and they need fixing fast. I just hope that the government chooses where to put these places wisely. Put them where there aren't that many people, where there isn't a kind of small, cozy town with a generally elderly population. Don't put it in places like that. Be sensible about where they put them. I'm not sure we can trust the government to do that, but that should definitely be their guiding light.
I think the argument that they're going to make this happen in their mind is a good one, but we'll see. Let's bring it to another subject very much close to my heart. Hundreds more tractors grinding Westminster to a halt with demonstrations across the country, Suffolk and Norfolk. I've explained already about what this essentially means, this inheritance tax. It's blind Labour belief that anybody that's got anything is minted. Like, so it's the whole, let's put VAT on private schools. My parents spent 60% of their money and didn't go on holiday for 18 years to send my brother and I to school. That was their choice. I don't think that it's the Labour assumption, isn't it? Everybody goes to private schools minted and everybody that's got a farm. Farmers take out between 1% and 2% of the value of their farm in wages. And so many have said, if we're forced to pay this 20%, we'd have to sell and also pay 40% capital gains and we'd be screwed. I believe it's nothing more than a cheap land grab so they can build their stupid wind farms and screw us all even more because they'll have to import it from abroad. You're with the farmers, aren't you? Because I am.
Oh, I'm completely with the farmers. I think what they're doing is incredibly important. I think they're taking a brave stand against a crazy government policy. And, you know, with the Labour government itself, I can't figure out whether they're doing what you've just described, which is a land grab, which I wouldn't put past them at all, for their stupid wind farms and other eco initiatives, or if they are just so clueless and so aloof and so cut off from ordinary people in ordinary life that they don't know how important farmers are. You know, there's another story in the news this week about how aristocratic Labour has become. It's a very much in club these days. A lot of middle-class people, a lot of Nepo babies, lots of people who've got sharp elbows and good connections. This is a new kind of government that is very, very removed from ordinary people, that doesn't understand what we do for a living, how our food is made, how things are transported. I think the more that we get these governments that live in a kind of technocratic otherworld, the more that they will just not understand the important things of life. It's
that for me, you're so right. I mean, here's the sheer magnitude of how stupid I think Labour are. So you're going to grab the land off farmers, who, by the way, make our food, 55% of it. So because you won't be able to make that food because you're taking our farmers' land away, we're going to have to import food. And we're already being screwed, farmers are, by supermarkets. So that's going to be even worse. But then even worse is we're going to do wind farms, which isn't going to provide enough electricity. So you'll have to import it despite all that we've got underneath. Drill, baby, drill. I think he's right. And so energy prices will go through the roof as well. It's just, as you said, it's almost as if there's no thought, no plan, no understanding of the very basic things of how this country works. I'm with you, really.
Yeah, I mean, they're a bunch of nutters, let's be honest about it. And this goes for governments across Europe, in fact. You know, the net zero policies are psychotic. So in the UK, for example, we've shut down virtually the entire coal industry. And so now we're getting our coal from overseas, you know, from South Africa or China or wherever, which firstly is produced in a less eco-friendly way than we might do it. And secondly, involves all that transportation. So, you know, these kinds of net zero policies, what they're basically basically all about is making us look good and eco-friendly with no regard for where our stuff comes from, where our energy comes from, where our food comes from. I just think that if you add together the net zero insanity with this inheritance tax and with this government that seems to have such a demeaning view of older people and farming people and working people in general, what it adds up to is a government that is basically kicking working class people and farmers in the stomach, and it's really out of order.
Well, I'm going to say something that I meant to say 20 minutes ago, and I'm delighted to say it in front of you, Brendan O'Neill. It's 6:20 on the 11th of December, 2024, and at some point this afternoon, I think around 3 o'clock, maybe 2:30, Sara Sharif's father and stepmother were found guilty of her murder in the most horrific way and will be sentenced on Tuesday. We have heard sweet FA from Yvette Cooper, from Mahmood, the Justice Secretary. Not a word, people, in nearly 4 hours. Am I right in saying that, right? Absolutely nothing. I mean, that to me is... I don't even... I'm speechless, man. Nothing. We've had no comment from the government on one of the most horrific things I think I've ever heard. Nothing at all. But they'll be busy banging on saying you can't take your car into the office because, you know, you might... I don't know, whatever. Ridiculous. So that's an update. I want to finish with a story that should send all of the people at Spiked and you straight through the roof. Take a breath. A London secondary school, Brendan, where more than half of pupils are eligible for free school meals, has asked children to fast for Gaza on Friday. Staff and students at George Green's School in Tower Hamlets have been told to come together in a collective fast on December the 13th in support of the people of Palestine. A post on the school's website, we found out, said, as a rights-respecting school, we stand united in supporting the children of Gaza, firmly advocating for their right to be safe, have healthy and have an education. It's being run by UNICEF. So even if you don't agree with that, you're not allowed to eat on Friday. Yeah. Thought?
I think it's outrageous, actually. It's incredibly serious, you know, because when you encourage school kids to fast for Gaza, you're basically brainwashing them into having one particular view of this conflict and into, you know, buying into all the leftist ideology and all the anti-Israel sentiment. And, you know, I want to know what are these people going to do for Jewish school kids in London, who, by the way, have at sometimes taken off their school blazers because they don't want to be targeted by anti-Semites.
Got a friend whose kids cannot wear their blazers on the bus or on the way to school in London. I've known her a long, long time for fear of reprisal. I could not agree with you more. And when I come off air, I will be abused online by all the Palestinian supporters who say all I do is stick up for Jewish people. Extraordinary.
Yeah, and, you know, sticking up for Jewish people is such an important thing to do right now. I live fairly near the Jewish Free School in northwest London, and when I saw school kids around there without their blazers, and some of them were taking off their kippahs or putting baseball caps over them, what a shame, a shaming moment that was for this country. And the fact that there are other schools inculcating children into the pro-Gaza, anti-Israel worldview, that's going to make this situation even worse. It's going to worsen those social tensions and worsen life for Jewish kids in the capital. So this school, I think, needs to stop this initiative.
It's ideology, and it's not allowing children in any way to form their own opinions. And of course, all the bedwetters will say, well, what's going on is appalling. I hate what I see in Gaza. I was also on air when that heinous, appalling crime took place on October the 7th, a year and a bit ago. And listen, I'll only say this. Israel's the only democratically elected state and government in that area. And I think with what's happened in Syria, and I think with what Israel has done to Hezbollah and the Houthis and certainly Hamas, I think the mad Ayatollahs in Iran are going to have to rethink their strategy going forward. But I think you're right when you say that about Jewish school kids.